Welcome back to Coats in Conversation. I'm your host, Kendrique Coats, a therapist for couples and athletes in Illinois and an athlete mental health advisor for the Illinois High School Association. In today's conversation, I'll be speaking with Lauren Huber, a former standout multi-sport athlete at Illinois Wesleyan and now is a current track and field athlete at the University of Notre Dame. In the first part of this episode, we talk a little bit about Lauren's journey navigating injuries and how it impacted her own mental health. We then go on to talk a little bit about leadership and how she has shown up for the teams that she's been on and where she gets a lot of her competitive drive from. And then later on in the episode, we talk about her reflection on being an athlete. And we also talk about her perspective on success as it relates to competing at the Division III level and then transitioning to competing at the Division I level. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did, and be sure to like and subscribe to Coats in Conversation for more episodes like this. Lauren, you have one of probably the most unique stories that I've ever heard as it comes to competing at the Division III level and then going D1. As you think back about on your experience at Illinois Wesleyan, juggling multiple sports and excelling in both of them, what do you feel defined you the most as a competitor?
I'd say balancing that type of workload, as any student athlete knows, I think what really defines it is resilience. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. Some days it feels manageable, and others you feel like there's just not enough hours in the day to do what you need to get done. So I think in both ways, it helped me really hone in and build importance around being resilient and not getting knocked down easily, and knowing that obstacles and challenges will come and that you're just going to have to keep working through them and try to enjoy the journey, not just the destination.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, just enjoying it, because I think it's so easy as just athletes in general. We sometimes get so stuck in the process of preparing for the season or a specific competition. This fierce competitive nature that's in you to compete in both of those sports, track and field and basketball. How early did this start? Was this something that started in you at a really early age, or when did it come about?
I'd say definitely started at an early age. My family's always been super into sports and a very large family. And even if it wasn't sports, we'd make a competition of anything. And so carrying that with me throughout my whole life. And then really, especially at Division III, we talk a lot about why we're playing and whether like the love of the game, love of the team, combo, trying to push your limits and see how much you're capable of. I'd say that's kind of what has kept me going. Like the initial, I want to be better than my older brother and sister is what started it. And then seeing how good that I can make myself become or what I can accomplish with my team is kind of what's kept it going.
I love that. And it's always, I hear from athletes, them having this competitive rivalry with siblings. As I'm thinking about you being involved in two sports and juggling athletics, obviously that does take some level of commitment and focus. I'd imagine, I know we talked a little bit in a previous conversation about injuries. And so for you, injuries and mental health struggles can change the way a lot of athletes see themselves, both within the game and in themselves. What was one of the hardest things for you to navigate, especially with mental health, when you were dealing with injuries?
It's a good question. I'd say, and I bet this resonates with some athletes, you want to continue playing, obviously. So there were multiple injuries where I was playing not at 100%, but my team still needed me and I wanted to be out there. So I continued playing. And I'd say that just the hard part about that is it feels a bit isolating because you can talk to people about the pain you're feeling, but ultimately you're the one deciding to put yourself out on the court. for a combination of reasons for yourself, for your team success, the goals. But it seems a little bit hypocritical to be talking to people about the pain that you're almost imposing on yourself.
Mm.
So I would say that was hard at times, but ultimately, again, going back to the why of the bigger picture of in 10 years, I'm not going to be thinking about how sore I was after that or how much it hurt there.
You mentioned the pain you impose on yourself when you have navigated injuries. Did you ever feel like you had to keep it to yourself, or did you ever feel like there was some sort of guilt if you weren't showing up for your team and competing because you were such a major factor in the sports you played?
I knew my team needed me on the court, but also I knew my team needed me as a leader. So I knew that I needed to take care of more than just myself. And sometimes when you're injured, it feels like you're working so hard just to keep afloat, to keep yourself afloat. So I knew that I could lean on my teammates, and I definitely did throughout the season and our athletic trainer and coaches. But ultimately, I wanted to be there for my team. And yeah, I guess
Yeah.
that meant not talking about it quite as much.
Yeah.
But
Which is it's so hard. I mean, I'm a former athlete and I've also coached as well. And I think it's so hard, especially I've been around athletes, some of the most competitive athletes, and you tell them anything about, hey, you've got to sit out a play. It's like, no, coach, I'm not doing that. Or it's, hey, we got to think about, your playing time for the next game because we want to, slowly get you into the game. And athletes are like, nah, I'm good, coach. Like just put me out there.
yeah, put me in.
But and it's almost, like you said, the pain I think you said inflict on yourself. I think also it's one of those things that we hold so much responsibility as leaders on our team that it's like, okay, if we aren't there in the middle of it and guiding and leading our team, will they will that missing piece impact the overall success of the team? So at what point, and I've heard from a lot of athletes who have said like, yeah, my mental health wasn't really where it could have been or should have been. Were there any points of your college journey or career where your mental health kind of struggled or suffered a little bit?
I'd say there definitely were, ups and downs along the way. Something that I did after competitions was doing some well, better, hows, something. So I would write something I did well that game, something I did could do better in the next game, and then how I was going to do it better, like specifically. But what I'd say my biggest mental battles was more revolved around injuries and kind of not wanting to talk about your pain when playing, when you're the one putting yourself in that position and deciding to continue playing. And for me, it kind of built up to the point of almost like a 2-day panic attack, which I didn't even know was possible, to the point where like at halftime I was getting some like ticks and then just thinking about the pain, I guess. And then like during the game too. And then even the next day at practice, thinking about going out on the court and playing and knowing that it was going to be painful was like causing these ticks. And I was like,
Hmm.
that's not normal. So definitely important to find some sort of balance that works for you.
When you mentioned, these panic attacks, did you like what was in addition to the ticks, were there other things leading up to that you felt or you experienced?
Well, I guess I was definitely anxious because I didn't know if I was going to be able to finish the game. Like to me, well, to everybody, the most important quarter of a basketball game is the fourth quarter. And I was worried I wasn't going to be around in the fourth quarter. So in
Mhm.
the second quarter, I'm getting nervous and I'm like, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. And then, yeah, so if I started thinking in the future, and I'd talked to a sports psychologist kind of sporadically throughout the season, and he always told me like anxiety manifests itself or thrives in the future. So if you're thinking about the here and now, you got to be where your feet are and take
Mm,
care of what's happening right now. And that's enough.
yeah, yeah. The other thing that I want to ask is, Did you ever feel like this phase that you were in with the anxiety or the panic attacks, did you ever feel like it impacted your overall performance, whether it was in practice or in during the games?
I'm kind of someone where when I'm like going through that, so when that was happening, I'm like, nobody look at me, please don't talk to me.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know what's happening. I can't answer any questions. And so after I reached out to my team and was like, thank you guys for supporting me, blah, blah, blah. And we kind of talked about it. And I think that just brought me a lot closer to my team. Whereas, so this happened my senior year. Whereas my sophomore self, like trying to be team captain as a sophomore to people older than me, I kind of thought like you can't show weakness. You need to be the one that everybody can depend on, which means you can't be leaning on others because they need to lean on you. Whereas by senior year, it was like everybody was helping support each other and it felt a lot stronger. And I was playing better probably too, because I didn't feel like I needed to do it all myself.
Thank you for sharing that because I don't know, as I think about mental health and I'm in this mental health space, there are a lot of athletes, teams, coaches, parents who don't necessarily believe in mental health. And I always say it's not quantifiable, such as, if you go out and score 20 points, okay, it's on paper. Or if you go out and run a 40-yard dash, okay, we've got a time to it. But when you look at mental health, it's not always visible. And to your point of, when you were going through that, it's like, okay, nobody look at me. It sounds like you really tried to bottle it up and hold it in. But what I really appreciate from what you shared is you reach out to your team and you're like, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. I'd imagine that just doing that allowed other athletes or other teammates of yours to open up or be a little bit more open and supportive to just anything that was going on during that season.
Yeah. And it was also cool. I mean, at Wesleyan being Division 3, people talk about, you know, I'm thinking about quitting. Why am I still on the team? I'm not getting playing time or whatever the reason is. I'm too busy outside of basketball. And we have those conversations very openly. And so it kind of really reinforces why people show up every day to practice. And so people show up with a lot of intention, and you can feel that energy from, we call it being an energy giver, not an energy taker. And something as simple as that, I think went a long way with our team.
Mm,
And like you said, with people not believing in mental health, I'd say I kind of just underestimated it. You think you're strong as an athlete and you're a good leader. You can do a lot, but everybody needs people.
I agree. Yes, I agree. You played a major role as a leader for your team. So, did your sense of leadership towards yourself or your teammates, and even your legacy that you left behind at Wesleyan, did it shape the way you've approached this new transition as you're graduated from a Division 3 institute, now moving to a Division 1 institute, which is Notre Dame?
Yeah, definitely. I think every experience I've had up until now has really shaped the way I approach this. So, my previous track background in high school, kind of just getting burnt out of the sport, not really even liking, but kind of hating competitions, which obviously as a competitive person isn't normal. So switching to basketball really seemed to just rev up my competitive energy more. And every game day I was excited. And now returning to track and kind of getting that almost like a student of the game.
Mm,
Like I remember basketball, I went from being a point guard in high school to being the post on our team at Illinois Wesleyan. And I was just learning so much and I
mm,
loved it. It was so interesting. And every day I felt like I was getting a little bit better. And now returning to track and doing that at the Division 1 level with great teammates and great coaches, I'm just very excited to learn and not really taking what I learned from Illinois Wesleyan is it's not about your stats all the time. It's not about your performance even, it's about your growth and your improvement. And the more relaxed you are and the more you absorb the information, the better you're going to be faster. And so I'd say that's how I'm approaching here at Notre Dame.
Can you go a little bit more into deep detail? Because as I mentioned at the beginning, you've got one of the most interesting stories that I've ever heard, as far as an athlete competing at the D3 level and then transitioning or transferring over to a D1 level. So, how did that all come about?
So, as I mentioned, high school, I ran track in middle school and then got kind of burnt out, really did not want to run track. So, pursued basketball at Wesleyan and also was majoring in biology freshman year. The track coach knew of me and kept trying to invite me out to some meets and just participate. They don't have a heptathlete. You can just hop in. And I was like, no. But ultimately, at the conference meet, I did. And I got to do my first hep and do jab for the first time and long jump. It was very tiring, but a lot of fun. And then after the next two basketball seasons, I had injuries that kind of didn't really put track in the question. But then going into senior year, I was like, I had fun doing this heptathlon and I did pretty well. I kind of want to see like what I can do if I actually practice. So I did that. And then still, I only had, I think I did three heptathlons, two actually, two full heps this past year. And I was like, that's really not a valiant go. Like I did not actually do it. Like I wanted to just try to like do it. And so then I was like, okay, I have this gap year before PA school. Let's try to actually be a heptathlete. And so I started talking to schools and they kind of took me on as a bit of a project of I have this score. This is not where we usually recruit people, but your form is horrible and you know nothing. So we can help you get a lot better quickly.
Wow. So, given this big leap, this jump, it almost seems like you have this internal confidence and leadership within yourself. Like you know what you want, and you're going to go after it. In addition to having that competitive drive, has that internal leadership and that drive and wanting to go after the goals that you have set for yourself, has that always been something that's been within you, or has that been something that's had to be developed over time?
I'd say a bit of both. And with that, it almost seems like I need to have my next 3 years mapped out in front of me. And especially, I know the whole recruiting process can be stressful for people. I think that you develop these traits and characteristics in yourself and you'll be on a path. You don't need to necessarily have that path laid out. But like you said, I think that I'm not going to get what I want unless I know what I want. So I need to figure it out. But sometimes that road is a bit more windier than you'd think it is. And that's why I'm really grateful at the spot I am now. I had amazing 4 years playing basketball, and I'm really excited for this next chapter too.
I'm looking at some of the accomplishments that you've accumulated. I mean, you were 2024, 2025 College Conference of Illinois and Wisconsin Women's Athlete of the Year, Illinois Wesleyan women's basketball all-time scoring leader. And this was like a record that I read that had been up for close to 3 decades. The other thing, two-time All-American, academic All-American, all of these accolades that you've accumulated from your time at Wesleyan. Some athletes will say, you know, I'm satisfied with that. I'm good with that. You're now like, no, I'm going to go compete even at a higher level. And sometimes athletes, I've heard this before, where they may have some anxieties or some uncertainties that, hey, the competition is about to increase maybe 2 or 3 times of what I'm used to seeing. Given all of your accolades, how has your perspective on success and self-worth changed or evolved from your time at Wesleyan to now being at Notre Dame?
I'd say it hasn't changed a whole lot. I know when you're looking at colleges and recruiting, you're kind of thinking like, do I want to be a big fish at a small pond or better competition in a small fish in a bigger pond? And I don't think that's how I viewed my college experiences. Like I didn't go to Wesleyan to be the all-time leading scorer. I went because I had a lot to learn in basketball and the team atmosphere and all the road trips, the Wednesday, Saturday games, the conference, like all of that is kind of the experience I was going for. And I think it's kind of a similar mentality entering Notre Dame of I just have so much to learn and I'm just wondering, how good I could be. And that's what I was wondering at basketball when in high school I only played one summer of AAU, which is not typical for playing in college. So I'd say my competitiveness definitely comes from not only my performance and definitely not like accolades, but more of seeing what I am capable of and going from there. And so successful to me would be getting better than I was when I was started. And I can say pretty confidently that that will happen here at Notre Dame. So,
I like that you said being more successful, and I'm paraphrasing, being more successful than I was before. And I think there are, I don't know, sometimes there are these high expectations that are placed on athletes, and they're, expectations of, hey, you got to go out there and earn a scholarship, or hey, you've got to go out there and run this time. And sometimes to me, it's almost like falling in love with the process will help get to those goals. Sometimes I think, and I see parents sometimes, and they're like, well, I want my son or daughter to run this time. I'm like, okay, well, what are you doing in between to get to that point? It's almost like baking a cake. You have to put in all of the ingredients first before you throw it in the oven. And for you, again, I want to highlight this because I can just hear the competitive drive that you have within yourself, but I can also hear this determination of wanting to be a better person. When it came to stepping into this college space, did you always see yourself as an athlete, or was it more of like, hey, I'm just a student here, especially at Wesleyan, I'm just a student here, just wanting to enjoy this experience?
yeah, good question. Before I lose my train of thought, when you were saying about scholarships and stuff, I'd say I'm definitely blessed to have this Division III background because I think that really affects my mentality in competing and my spot on the team. It was obviously scholarships were never really a thought at Division III. And now I'm just here for a year. So I don't really have to have that constant worry about earning scholarship money next year. And by the time I'm a senior and all of these things that a lot of athletes have to worry about and how closely they're linked with your performance and not necessarily your growth or how you are as a leader. So I'd say I'm very thankful that I did spend my 4 years at Wesleyan and kind of got that holistic, whole person way to view.
I'm going to ask this question, and I'm looking at all the accolades because I'm still just like, your story is just, I'm just like, whoa, everything that you've accomplished thus far is something that's amazing, and I think, worthy of highlighting because it is. You've put in a lot of time and effort and sacrifice, all of those things. If you could go back to your 9-year-old, 10-year-old, maybe 11-year-old self and talk to her about your experience that you've had thus far, is there anything that you would have told her to better prepare her for this journey to where you're at now?
I would just say, just keep trying your hardest. You can only do as much as you can do. And if you're working at something as hard as you can, then be content because you always have a goal you're chasing, but you can't just be unfulfilled the whole time. So know that every day when you're juggling everything you have going on in life and maybe you feel like you could be doing a little bit better in everything, but you tried your best today, then that was a good day and you're on to tomorrow. And I think that's how you just keep going and build steam and reach your goals.
For this podcast, there may be another young athlete out there who may have a similar path as yours, or may have similar goals or expectations or things that they're wanting to get out of college. Is there any piece of advice that you would give that young person who's getting ready to step into the college space and compete as a student athlete?
I'd say be very open-minded. I definitely was not really Well, okay. In one sense, I was very open-minded. I applied to like 25 universities. I didn't know if I wanted to just be a student or play a sport, play basketball, be a walk-on at a big school or but in another sense, I was very like I want to go to a school where people recognize the name and I want it to be Nike brand and now I'm at Under Armour and loving it. So it's like you don't when you're in high school, you really don't know what it's like day to day. And you think you're gonna be spending all your time going to football games or and maybe you go to a football game and you're like, this isn't as fun as I thought it'd be. And so I'd say just be open-minded about that. And getting on campus visits is obviously a hopeful.
I just want to thank you for sharing your story because, again, that's the whole purpose of Coats and Conversation is allowing athletes to come on to share their unique experiences and stories. And yours is one of those, again, going and competing at the Division III level, being a multi-sport athlete, multiple All-American awards and other awards, in addition to community work, specifically with organizations like U.S. Hunger and Source Special Needs. All of these things, you are a bright light. I can just hear it in the passion in which you talk about these things. I'm just so thankful that you took the time to be able to come on to Coats and Conversation to share your story and your experiences as a college athlete.
Thank you, Kendrick. Thank you so much for having me, for all your kind words, and for taking the time to talk.
Yeah, absolutely.